Stories are inherently human and are all around us. Raw data or numbers are more challenging to understand and relate to than a compelling story. The emotional appeal and memorability of narratives. Who among us hasn't seen their favorite movie several times? Consider children who make their parents tell the same tale repeatedly. Religions are rife with gripping stories. Politicians and public presenters are, at their best, excellent storytellers. We communicate with one another and even with ourselves through narratives. Because narratives are both lovely and strong, they also have a negative aspect. People in positions of power use narratives to control us, and we can become caught up in them. Additionally, there is a lot of social pressure to maintain particular narratives. The toxicity of narratives is best summed up by what Edward Snowden tweeted yesterday. The whole system revolves around the idea that the majority can be made to believe anything, so long as it is repeated loudly and often. And it works. And it works. To be free, we must be willing to learn, unlearn, and relearn some of the stories we hold dear. The positives, negatives, and ugly of narratives. We receive condensed wisdom from narratives that we can recall and share. They offer us direction and explanation. We don't want to live in a world where things are illogical. Thus, narratives explain why events occurred and what might occur in the future. People are curious as to why an economy may collapse or perform poorly. People demand an explanation of why they must fight and how they can win if their leaders decide to start a war. Humans are innately curious, which is why kids constantly question why about everything. Oddly, they don't frequently ask how. An intense tale appeals to emotions. It can be lighthearted, sad, and dramatic but not overly intellectual. This explains why everyone still enjoys historical Hollywood films despite hating history in high school. A story should connect the dots, showing intriguing facts and relationships if attempting to explain something. All right, that's excellent. But what's wrong with narratives? Let's use some examples to illustrate that. People will have compelling stories to support their political ideologies if you ask them why they are liberal or conservative. Democrats and Republicans, or the Congress and the BJP in India, virtually invariably take opposing positions when asked how the economy is performing in polls, even though economic statistics appear to be undisputed realities. There are many stories of the dreadful things that are occurring around the globe that those who believe in the climate catastrophe will have to share. Millions of Americans have repeated the claims made by geopolitical analyst Peter Zeihan regarding the coming downfall of China. However, nobody seems to mind that most of his stories are made up entirely of fiction or exaggeration. The battle between Russia and Ukraine has a culprit. According to whom, you ask? So what is the narrative being told here about narratives? Narratives are incredibly individualized. They aren't necessarily unbiased or factual. We can distort stories whichever we choose. And narratives are all there is to politics. For instance, between 1990 and 2014, the net worth of the top 1% of Americans increased by 400%. The poorest 50% of all Americans experienced a 0% increase in net worth during the same period. The wealth of the top 1% was 30 times that of the bottom 50%. There was a need for solutions. The rigged and exploitative economic system is the obvious cause. But in America, Wall Street billionaires are the top priests, and capitalism is the official religion. Therefore, another explanation was needed. Then Trump arrived with a fresh idea: it's the fault of the Chinese and the Mexicans. He pledged to restore America's greatness and bring manufacturing employment. Trump asserted he could eliminate the national debt, strike incredible trade agreements with other nations, build a substantial wall to deter illegal immigration, and clear the swamp in Washington, D.C. All of these were implausible promises, yet nobody seemed to care. Why? It was an uplifting story without any sense of shame. In conclusion, the drawback of narratives is they can be irrational and unscientific. Popular tales in contemporary culture are frequently imbalanced, false, and manipulative. The ugly aspect is that the militarization of stories. The anchor of MSNBC complained that Trump was attempting to dominate public opinion during the 2016 presidential election. Mika Brzezinski is the daughter of the man who organized the Mujahideen in Afghanistan and later Al-Qaeda in Syria. She said, "That's our, media's, job," in a Freudian mistake. America has evolved into an empire of lies. From heated wars and sanctions to vaccines and climate change to social engineering and beyond, narratives are weaponized to create consent for everything. They accomplish this using two strategies. First, they have all Western journalists, politicians, and media members recite talking points like zombie stenographers. This consistent messaging and fake consensus turn lies into truths. Secondly, by banning dissident viewpoints from appearing on international social media, the US ultimately controls them. All of this is right out of the Hitler playbook. Unfortunately, most people need more time and knowledge for critical thinking. As a result, people believe the stories propagated by experts and the mainstream media. How simple it is to trick people and incite widespread frenzy is demonstrated by the current uproar surrounding a Chinese spy balloon. A straightforward weather balloon was transformed into a national security emergency. By the way, the image below shows what a real spy balloon looks like. A spy balloon is equipped with cutting-edge communication, surveillance, navigation, and maneuvering technology. Instead of using fighter jets and missiles, the US should have brought it down safely for analysis. But the chance to demonize China from a geopolitical standpoint was just too good to pass up. What was shocking was how the evidence was destroyed after the accusation. How cunning! This tactic was also employed in Syria when the United States destroyed a university hours before UN inspectors were scheduled to visit and look for possible chemical weapons production there. While the US continuously disseminates false information about its geopolitical adversaries, its misdeeds are quickly covered up or brushed off as conspiracy theories. Seymour Hersh, a renowned writer and Pulitzer Prize winner who exposed the US military's My Lai massacre in Vietnam and Abu Ghraib torture in Iraq, has prepared a thorough analysis of how the US bombed the Nord Stream pipelines. What consequences are there? None. Refute and continue. In 2014, the same individuals who destroyed the Nord Stream also destroyed Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 over Ukraine. America is a lie-based empire. And the elites will continue to push the envelope if no one challenges them. It's a scaled-up psyop. Let's look at a few instances. We are bringing democracy and freedom to Iraq. Why? Because Saddam Hussein had CBRN, the acronym for chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons. Nazis are not present in Ukraine. In the first image, members of Ukraine's most prominent neo-Nazi fighting unit, the Azov Battalion. Totenkopf, Nazi skull and bones, middle image. Third image, Schutzstaffel, the paramilitary SS, which served as Nazi Germany's security, surveillance, and terror organization. China is unable to innovate. It only steals and duplicates US intellectual property. Developing countries shouldn't modernize too much because too much CO2 would raise the Earth's temperature to a point where we would all perish. From 1880 to 1980, the science of climate change failed to provide any results. Reference: NASA. West and America are becoming cannibals of themselves. At least the populace of an intelligent imperialist country will prosper as the elites pillage other countries. Americans, Europeans, and other allies are being taken advantage of by American elites. Unknowingly, Europeans are ruining their future, deindustrializing their economy, and endangering a nuclear catastrophe to prolong the American century. Most Westerners witness their wealth being steadily drained, their families being destroyed, and people becoming weaker mentally, physically, and spiritually. Without the need for an authoritarian government, everything is accomplished through narratives. This is the creation of contemporary evil. The myths about the virtues of the free market and limited government in America have resulted in extreme inequality and the dwindling middle class. As a result, more than 60% of Americans rely only on their income. When you consider the massive censorship and surveillance, the stories about individual freedom in the US are lies. Additionally, as Twitter files demonstrated, American government organizations like the CIA, FBI, DHS, and others collaborate with social media behemoths to restrict citizens and manage narratives. Additionally, Operation Mockingbird is still active, which indicates that the American media serve as propaganda weapons for the deep state. Moreover, the two-party system is a fraudulent democracy. The United States is a plutocracy or oligarchy, with colossal election dramas occurring every 4 years. Narratives dupe people. Therefore they cannot recognize the massive reality of what it is, a scam. Further instances include: this is art, and it has received numerous honors. This is good for you. This is normal childhood. Young boy dressed as a girl, and Barbie dolls of women with beards and girls with penises. Conclusion. Typically, it's a good idea to follow the crowd, but not anymore. Mainstream narratives from the US strongly influence or even control the global media and politics. And many of the dominant narratives are factually wrong, logically inconsistent, morally wrong, and simply toxic. Additionally, narratives cannot be separated. Americans cannot, for instance, declare that they will support the war against Russia despite knowing that Wall Street is corrupt. Likewise, people cannot claim, "I don't support America's wars, but I trust their science and social messages," outside the United States. Why? Since everything is connected. There is only one system, and the same vital interests govern it. But that is the subject of a different piece. We must study and question the dominant narratives no matter how widely accepted they are or how long we have received them. We need to unlearn what we already know and learn new things. And at times, we must emulate this man.